The continuity of all your data on Google's services is probably pretty reliable. Everything that Google knows about you, they do not want to forget anytime soon. It's probably more worth worrying about privacy concerns or your data somehow getting into the wrong hands or getting stolen somehow, or given to advertisers with malicious intent. However, I don't think that means that you shouldn't back up all of your Google data. Everything that's up there in Google's services is pretty safe, but what if something happened to Google's servers? What if some kind of bug got into your account and affected your information? Or what if you lost your internet connection for a long period of time and needed access to your data? Or more likely, what if Google invented an AI that was evil and you needed to close down your Google account as soon as possible? That's the most likely one. And that's when you're going to want your backup. Now for Windows and Mac, it might seem relatively simple how you go about backing up your Google data because Google themselves makes apps for Windows and Mac to pull from Google Drive and such. On Chromebooks, it's not immediately so obvious, though as we'll get into, all of the methods I'm going to discuss are actually in many ways better than the Windows and Mac apps by Google. Now, just before we start, this video feels a little bit intense in terms of how much info I'm about to drop on you, and I'm a bit worried about getting anything wrong. So if I do later on, after making this video, realize that I've made a mistake, then I'm going to make a pinned comment in the comments below. So see if there's a pinned comment saying, don't do any of this. Now, what are you going to need? Not much. A hard drive, an external hard drive, unless your Chromebook has tons of space on it, not likely. A Chromebook, obviously, and Linux on your Chromebook. If you haven't already, go into settings, find Linux, and turn it on. Now here's an overview of roughly what we're going to do. I'll go through this in more detail in a moment. The first step in our process is Google Takeout. Google Takeout lets you pull your data from all of Google's services and download it as archive files. You can also import Google Takeout directly into Google Drive. This is something we'll be discussing. Then ideally we'll be using a separate program to download Google Drive and possibly Google Photos separately as well. Because if you use them, these are both very large sources of data, and just using Google Takeout to export them is a hassle, to say the least. The first step in our backup plan is Google Takeout, and depending on how far you go, this might be your last step as well. It's simple to use. All you do is go to takeout.google.com. You'll see a massive list of all of these Google services. You can pick and choose whichever ones matter to you, and then export them to either your email, and you'll get a download link, or to your Google Drive, or one of these other services too. You also have the option to make your chosen backup occur once or 6 times. That's once every 2 months for a year. Now, here's what I recommend here. If you don't have a lot of data on your Google account, it's just a bit, and you're not too fussed about this whole backup business, you're just doing it because I said it was vaguely important at the start, then there's no reason you can't just select everything here that you use, including Drive and Photos, send the download link to yourself via email, make it export every 2 months for a year, maybe put up the size of the archive files to 10 or 50 gigabytes, and create the export. And then basically you could be done. Google will think about all the stuff that you've chosen, it'll email you once your archive is ready, you just got to download it, put it on your backup, and Bob's your uncle. Now, the reason I don't recommend this for anyone with a lot of Google data is because every time Google Takeout gives you some files, they're going to be massive. They're going to include everything, and you've got to download it all. And it is a hassle. Not only that, but the archives you download, you then have to extract, and then your data could be in any kind of configuration. It's not sorted out very well. Google doesn't cleanly put all your stuff in nice files before they send you the archive. No, it can be a mess. That's why it's absolutely fine for a last resort backup, but you don't really want to be working with your Google Takeout files very often. So for the next step, here's what I recommend here. Select every service that you use and want to export except the big ones, which is usually Google Drive and Google Photos. If you use these, they're likely to have the largest files and are the largest sources of Google data. Now, even if Google Photos is relatively large, you may decide that selecting it as a Google Takeout is your favorite option in your backup. But we'll talk about that more later. For now though, I definitely recommend not selecting Google Drive. Now you can either send that download link to your email and every 2 months you'll have to download the archives, or if you've got plenty of space on your Google Drive account, then why not add this to Drive? Your archives will automatically get put in Google Drive, and our Google Drive backup, which we'll get to in a minute, will sort everything out for you. So basically, if you've got a bit of extra room in your Google Drive, then selecting Add to Drive is what I recommend for less hassle down the road. Export every 2 months, and whatever options you like for these. Doesn't really matter. Create export. Okay, that's Google Takeout. That's step 1. Step 2, we got to sort out this Google Drive and maybe Google Photos if you've excluded that as well from your Takeout. Now, there are many different apps and services that allow you to back up your Google Drive data via your Chromebook. And the past week or so, I've tried a lot of them. Honestly, not many are great. Here's a big reason why. Google Docs, Slides, Sheets, etc. If we download these as they are from Google Drive, they're only going to be links to the file on the cloud, which is useless for a backup. If something happens to your file on the cloud, then what? You've got a link. Great. Useful. Now, this is actually what the official Windows and Mac Google Drive app does. It just downloads the links. So that's kind of useless. We need something better here. I actually came across some great Android apps, to my surprise, like Folder Sync, which allow you to download all of your Google Drive data in a pretty elegant way, but they just download those links. And that is not what we want. What we need is a program that will convert those links into a doc or an open Word format. So then if something happens to our cloud, we've still got our data. We can open the files, read them, edit them, etc. I basically narrowed it down to 2 good options here: Insync and rclone. Let's go over the differences. Insync has a graphical user interface. It runs more like a regular Windows or Mac program. rclone is run mostly via the command terminal, so you do have to type in commands to make it work. Technically, rclone has a bit of a graphical user interface you can turn on, but it doesn't do much. I wouldn't worry about it. Insync is nice and simple, but occasionally limited, while rclone is more complicated, but does give you a lot of control over what you're doing. Insync is automatic-ish, and basically you can leave it on and it can be syncing 2-way up and down from your local drive to the cloud and vice versa. Though rclone is near automatic, and you can set it up so that you don't have to do much at all to keep it running. Insync can't back up directly from Google Photos, while rclone can. So that's a big difference there. Though, I must say, the rclone Google Photos backup can only be done in high quality. The compressed high quality, not original quality if you're saving your photos in original quality. So let's just have a quick aside, pause that comparison. So maybe you're content to do your Google Photos backup from Google Takeout. Lovely, fine. You'll get original quality. It's in a mess, it's in an archive, you have to download it every time, the whole thing, but relatively simple. Or you can use rclone. You'll only be getting high quality images, not original. It does take a bit of setting up, which I'll go through soon, but when you're syncing with rclone, you don't have to re-download the whole thing. It just checks what you've got, just downloads the new stuff. Neither option is perfect, I know. Hopefully this improves in the future. If you're interested, there are other options you can investigate. There's this Photos Downloader, which apparently is this service that lets you download all of your photos in high quality, though at the time of making this video, it says it's temporarily under maintenance and I can't use it. So I don't know what it's like. There's also this little program designed by this guy, Nicholas Dawson, and it's just this little program, Google Photos Archiver. Apparently, it downloads all of your Google Photos in high quality, and ostensibly it's easy to use, though you just need to learn how to use a Python program, and I haven't bothered myself with learning that. So, but the links for those are below. You can check them out if you like. Otherwise, for Google Photos, you're using Takeout or you're using rclone. Okay, so where were we? Insync versus rclone. There's only one other point to make about them. Insync is paid, rclone is free. Now, granted, Insync isn't very expensive. It's a one-time purchase and you can back up multiple Google Drive accounts. What's this here? $40 US or $60 US to get a couple extra features. I don't think that is unreasonable at all. If your time is money, tick, 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 money, 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 then it's worth remembering rclone will take you some time in setting up and maintaining whereas Insync will probably get you going faster, so it's probably worth the money. Okay, how are we going? I know this is a lot. What I'm going to do now is go through the setup for each of those. The setup for Insync, and then the setup for rclone. There are time codes below, so you can skip around and all of that. It's also worth remembering that I know all of this stuff that I'm telling you, simply because I'm a user. I'm not a wizard. That said, if you do run into any little issues, feel free to post them in the comments below. I will help if I can. Let's go through the Insync installation. It's fairly straightforward. Start by going to the Insync website, hit the download button. And then of course we don't want to download for Windows, so we'll click on this Linux penguin and then go download for Linux. What we want for a Chromebook is Debian and Buster. Debian Buster. Hit download. Once that's finished downloading, we just want to right click on it and go install with Linux. And then click on the install button. That will do its business for a little while. Shouldn't take long. Once installation is complete, we can find Insync is installed and open it up. And here we are, we're in Insync. You'll want to add a Google Drive account by selecting the account and allowing access to Insync. Then it's going to take you through some options here. The first one is where you want to store your backup. Now make sure you've plugged in your backup. Find your backup in files, and you'll probably want to make a folder now for your Google Drive backup. So I might call it Google Drive Backup. That's pretty logical. Then you want to right click on that folder and go down to Share with Linux. This is going to give Insync access to that folder. Change the location that Insync is going to access, and then you want to go Computer on the left, go to the slash, MNT, ChromeOS, removable, the name of your hard drive, mine's Seagate, and then you've got your folder there, Google Drive Backup. And I'm going to choose that as my backup location. Go next. You can skip that for now. Next. All right, this is important. This is what I was talking about earlier. Do you want Insync to convert your Google Docs, Sheets, Slides, and Drawings to a desktop format? If you don't convert them, you're just getting those useless links. So I recommend converting them to either Microsoft Office or Open Document. I'm going to go with Open Document. On the next screen, it'll give you some options for when conflicts occur. Doesn't really matter right now, just leave them on Always Ask is good. Then you can select which items you want to sync, or just select them all. Go sync. And there it is, it's happening. Now there are other options in Insync, of course. You can add another drive account up here. There are options for exactly which folders you want to sync and in which direction, two-way or one-way. But essentially you're done, easy. Anytime Insync is open, it's gonna be backing up your Google Drive data. And that's the benefit of Insync. You'll be able to actually work on your files that you've downloaded to your drive, and they can automatically be synced back up into the cloud. So many of you might be satisfied with your backup there. Good for you, well done. You've done a very solid backup. On we go to rclone. To get started with rclone, we want to go to the rclone website. We want to go to downloads, and we need to download a .deb. And it'll depend, do you have an Intel processor or an ARM processor? If you don't know what you've got, you can quickly open up settings, go down to About ChromeOS Diagnostics, and it says here what the processor in my Chromebook is. I've got an Intel processor here, and I know it's a 64-bit one, so I'm taking Intel 64-bit Deb. Once that's downloaded, you want to right-click on it and go Install with Linux, and install. Shouldn't take long at all. Once that's done, open up the terminal and let's get down to business. To get started, let's enter rclone config. It says we don't have any remotes yet. A remote is basically a controller for your sync. So you can have a whole bunch of remotes, a different remote for different Google accounts, a remote for Google Drive, a remote for Google Photos. Look, you don't need to fully understand it right now. Let's just enter N for new remote, and then it wants us to give it a name. This is going to be for Google Drive, so I'm just going to call it Google Drive. Enter again, and then here we've got a big list. I'm going to make this full screen actually. A big list of all of these services that rclone can access. So we're looking for Google Drive. Down here at 15, we've got Google Drive, and the shortcut for that is just Drive. So all we want to enter down here is Drive. Hit enter. Application client ID. Now, if you have a big Google Drive and you want it to transfer as fast as possible in rclone, then you're going to want to make your own client ID. But I'm not going to explain that right here, and you can easily edit this later. I recommend you just start with the default. So you don't need to enter anything here, just hit enter. And one more time, enter. Now here it's asking, should the remote have full access to your Google Drive to download and upload to it? Or number 2 option is read-only access, which means your remote won't be able to upload to your Google Drive. Personally, I want my backup to just literally be a backup. I'm not going to edit things so that they can upload back to Google Drive. So I'm going with number 2, which is read-only. But feel free to go with number 1 here as well, if you would like to upload from your backup to Google Drive in the cloud. So entering 1 or 2, I'm going 2. You can leave the next one blank, and the next one blank. And do we want to edit advanced config? Not at the moment, just enter N, enter. Use auto config, yes. Now it's going to open up a window where you can pick your Google account and give rclone access to your Google Drive. Once that's done, we come back to the terminal, and do we want this to be configured as a shared drive? No. And finally, is it all good? Are we happy? Y for yes, enter. Okay, we've done it. So we've created our first remote for Google Drive. The process we just went through is basically exactly the same for Google Photos. So if you want rclone to do your Google Photos as well, then you can repeat this process, make a new remote, and pick Google Photos instead of Google Drive. But for now, I'm going to enter Q to quit that. Now we're almost ready to sync, but let's check our hard drive first. Make sure you've got your backup drive plugged in. You can make a folder here and share it with Linux, or I'm just going to share the whole hard drive with Linux actually. Right click, share with Linux, okay. And that's just going to allow rclone to see your external backup. Now I've just started a new terminal here for cleanliness. We want to go rclone sync. There are many commands that you can learn to do in rclone, but sync is the main one we'll cover for now. Sync will allow us to sync our data from the cloud to our local drive. So the first thing we want to put here is the name of our remote that we created earlier. I called it Google Drive, and then a colon. So we've got rclone, sync, name of our remote, colon. Next, we need to put the destination, where the data is going. So that's our local drive. It can be difficult to know what the folder path of your local drive is, but here's a clue for you. If it's an external drive like mine is, then you're going to want to put /mnt/Chrome OS/removable, spell it right, / the name of your drive. Mine is called Seagate. / and then you can make up a folder name for where this backup is going to go. It's going to create it itself, so I'm going to call it rclone backup. So this is good. We've got rclone sync from Google Drive to here on our local drive. We could press enter and this would run, but I'm just going to add at the end here -P, and that will make it show us the progress as it's going. Hit enter, and there we are, we're off. It is transferring all our files. It says what's happening. It'll tell us if there are any problems. I don't have a lot on this drive, so it's going to be pretty quick, but yours could take a while. The nice thing is, though, that you could pause this at any time just by closing the terminal window, and then when you're ready to come back to it, it will pick up from where it left off. That's what you're going to want to enter every time that you do this sync of your Google Drive. So you might just want to copy that, paste it somewhere that you like to keep things, and so you'll always be ready to just paste that into the terminal and you're off. There are 2 things left to show you before I'm going to finish up here. That is Google Photos in rclone, and then how to run multiple remotes in rclone at the same time more easily. So Google Photos. If you're using rclone to back up your Google Photos, hopefully you've set up your remote just like you did your Google Drive one. But before you start a sync, there's something you should know. When rclone downloads from Google Photos, it downloads in these folders. It downloads a media folder, an album folder, a shared album folder, and a feature folder, which includes your favorites if you've marked favorites in Google Photos. Now, there are going to be a lot of duplicates across these folders. In your albums, you might have the same images across multiple albums. And in this media folder, underneath that, we've got all by year, by month, by day. Now, these are going to contain the same images between them as well. They're just sorted differently, by month, by day, or by year, or all of them in one single unsorted folder. Now, this means you'd be kind of crazy to download everything from all of these folders. The number of duplicates you'd be getting is just wild. I recommend downloading your by month folder. This will download all of your Google Photos and sort them by folder under the month that Google Photos has them listed as. Now, if you really care about your albums or your favorites, then maybe you download those as well, if you really care about those collections. What I'm going to show you now is how to download just the by month folder. So here in the terminal, we want to go rclone sync, and then the name of your Google Photos remote that hopefully you made earlier. I called mine Google Photos, and then give it a colon at the end. Next, we want our destination for the Google Photos. I'm going /mnt/ChromeOS/removable/Seagate/ and then I'll call this one rclone photos. Now, don't hit enter just yet. Maybe you give that a P as well so we can see our progress. And then you need to make sure it's only going to download that monthly folder. Enter -- include space /media/ by -month/ and then 2 asterisks, asteriski, and then you're ready to go. You've got rclone sync from Google Photos to this new folder on my drive, show the progress, and only include that folder. Hit enter and off we go. Again, that will just do its thing. Now, what if you wanted to run both of these commands, run your Google Drive remote and your Google Photos remote at the same time? Maybe you've got even more remotes. Maybe you've got like 10 remotes you want to run at the same time. Well, you don't have to put them all in one by one. What we're going to do is very quickly make a simple little bash script that you can run with one command to run multiple remotes. On your Chromebook, open up the text program and make sure you've got a new document here. What you want to enter is #bin/bash. That's the first line. That just tells it that it's a bash script command thingy. A couple lines down from that, you want to enter the first command that you want to run. So for me, that's going to be this one here, the Google Drive command. So I can just copy it actually from there and paste it here. Beautiful. Couple lines down from that, enter the next one. That'll be this one here for me, the Google Photos remote. And then you can keep doing that. A couple lines down, you might enter another one that's totally different, and so on and so on. Then once you've added them all, we just want to save this text document. You've got to save it somewhere that Linux has access to. It might be on your external drive. That's probably smart, actually. You could put it in Linux files, but on your external drive is probably smart. I'm going to call it rclone script. And then you've got to get rid of this txt, change that to .sh. So I've got rclone script.sh. Save. Close that. Now, one more step before we can use that script, we just have to activate it. Enter into the terminal chmod +x, and then we need the destination of that file we just made. So I put it on my external drive, which was mnt/ChromeOS/removable/Seagate/ and then the name of the file, rclonescript.sh. Oops, I'll tell you what, for this one, I need a slash. I need an extra slash here. Hit enter. There we go. We've made that script active. So now all we need is this location, this directions towards that script file. If we paste that into the terminal, Control-Shift-V, hit enter, and off go our rclone remotes. Easy as that, eh? I hope that was somewhat legible and that some of you managed to follow along, maybe learn some things, and have a kick-ass backup set up now. The only other thing to mention is to make sure that you back up other things from your life. you can incorporate them into this backup plan that you've got. So I've made a reminder on my calendar for once a year to go to other services like Facebook, like my journal and Instagram, and download backups from those and put them in my Google Drive, so that I've still got those. Anything that you would miss if it was lost, it's nice to have a second copy around. So much of this, all of this actually is hopefully unnecessary, of course, but they're pretty simple steps to take to waylay that paranoia about your data that can set in. And I mean, it's worth keeping a bit of perspective. No backups are perfect. You could back up all of this stuff 100 times in 1,000 different places. We live in a world where all of that could still go away. But hope this has helped some of you. Take care.